Chicago economy is a huge economy.
Looking for a job.
I've been looking for work.
Looking for a job.
Looking for a position.
Over a year.
6 months. 3 months.
9.5 million people.
I'm an actuary. Mobile ad sales.
I'm a senior executive for a nonprofit.
A workforce of 4 million. An economic output of $500 billion a year.
If Chicago and the suburbs were a country, we would have one of the 25 largest economies in the entire world. But the world is changing. Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Robinson.
And I'm political editor Mike Flannery. Our job market and economic landscape are changing with the force of an economic earthquake. Jobs that mean so much to us are in transition. That's to the benefit of some.
And left others struggling to keep up. Some of the problems we did not create. There are new national and global realities.
Other problems are vintage Chicago and Illinois.
Pension payment or police officer? A pension payment or a parks program?
Everyone's bills are higher than ever, yours and mine personally and our government's. And the money to pay those bills is not coming in like it used to.
Chicago in the 1930s. Here and for decades to follow, smoke from hundreds of foundries, coke ovens, and blast furnaces was thick enough to obscure the midday sun. In winter, iron oxide in the air would bind with lake-effect snow, turning the flakes blood red as they fell to earth. But few complained. Chicago was a place where anyone who wanted a job could get a job. By the 1960s, after labor unions waged long strikes against big steel, mill jobs paid enough to buy a nice house, support a stay-at-home spouse, and to educate 4, 5, or even more kids all the way through college. Then, by the 1970s, it was coming undone. The steelmakers began going bankrupt. They could not match the price, and in some cases, the quality of manufacturers in Japan, South Korea, and elsewhere. The same thing happened to hundreds of factories here that made color televisions, machine tools, and parts for the auto industry. As those jobs moved away, workers and their families left behind were devastated. Parts of the South Side and the West Side still bear the scars. Today, about 55% of Chicago's jobs are in fields such as finance or insurance, or they require professional credentials, management training, or scientific skills. Factories employ barely 5% of the city's workforce.
Kind of like the smoke from those old chimneys, Chicago's middle class is now vanishing. Dame Placco reports those without work and even with jobs are getting squeezed.
Since the 1950s, Americans have been told that if you play by the rules, work hard, and get a good education or skill, you too can enjoy the benefits of a middle-class lifestyle. Which is what Jim Cook used to believe.
I figured everything would be sitting pretty, but as soon as the economy dropped, that all went out the window.
Cook, a union electrician, hasn't worked for 2 years. He and his wife, Carol, live in a nice middle-class home in Lockport, where they're raising 13-year-old twins. Carol is now working part-time to bring in some income, but their savings are dwindling quickly.
My mom was widowed when I was 7, so she raised 4 of us kids then by herself. And, you know, seeing what she went through, I thought, geez, I never want that to happen for my kids. And it's just, I just want them to have things, and now it's just so hard.
Economists call it the middle-class squeeze.
It's shrinking. I think that it's harder to, the kinds of good-paying jobs that existed in the previous generation are gradually going away.
DePaul economist Tom Monchine says globalization is one of the biggest reasons for that squeeze.
The rest of the world has gotten much better at competing with us, and they have good educational systems, they have well-trained people who are willing to take jobs for half or less than half of the salaries that we are used to earning here in the States, and that's a problem.
But it's not affecting all Americans equally. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, households making more than $186,000 saw their share of income climb by 5% in 2011, while those making between $20,000 and $101,000 saw their income drop by 1.5%. And in the Chicago region, it's even more dramatic. The average middle-income worker making $44,000 a year back in 2000 was only making $40,000 a year 10 years later, while at the same time, costs for housing, health, and education have all soared dramatically. You have a household income of $103,000, right?
Yes.
And yet you're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
Stephanie Williams and Cara Kimball Williams are a married couple living with 4 children in South suburban Sauk Village.
27 divided by 3 equals what? 9. Good job.
Stephanie has a master's degree and teaches math at a charter school. Cara is an IT specialist. Despite that 6-figure combined income, they say they're barely scraping by.
By the time we pay for the kids' clothing, some food, maybe a fun activity here and there, we're tapped out.
I remember once telling my mom, man, I messed up. I went to college. I got a master's degree. For what? It's almost like you're living, but you really aren't living because all you're doing is paycheck to paycheck.
For a long time, we were moving in the wrong direction. A global economic policy group says that since the turn of the millennium, the economy here has been, quote, disappointing. It conducted a study finding that Chicago is indeed at a tipping point. From 2000 to 2010, the Chicago area's employment rate dropped 4 times faster than the national average. Since 1995, our unemployment rate has been higher than the average U.S. metro region. This August, the national unemployment rate was 7.3%. In Chicago, it was 9.4%. Overall, Illinois unemployment was 9.2%, second worst in the country. Only Nevada had more unemployment. Mayor Emanuel took office in 2011. His economic development team says Chicago has struggled to adapt to new global economic realities. Its plan to turn things around includes a focus on attracting advanced manufacturing, business headquarters and business services, transportation and logistics operations, and tourism and entertainment. Another goal is to provide support for entrepreneurs building new businesses from the ground up.
The city has taken steps to implement the plan. Still, critics complain that Chicago remains an expensive and all too often unfavorable place to do business. For those who ask, why does Illinois have the highest unemployment rate in the Midwest?
The state is not helping you grow your business. They're placing hurdles in front of you.
Darren Light told us last summer why he moved more than 100 jobs from this now empty factory in the northwest suburbs to a new plant in Tennessee. He said it's less expensive to do business there and his company would make more money.
I loved Illinois. It's where I grew up. It's where I raised my family. I didn't want to move. It's sad to move. You know you're disrupting and changing people's lives.
Factory owners dominate the ranks of companies leaving Illinois. Some simply cross the state line in search of lower costs. Kenall, Hanna Cylinders, Emco Chemical, and Noark Electric are among companies recently exiting to Wisconsin. Indiana says at least 31 Illinois-based employers have recently moved 2,700 jobs to the Hoosier State, virtually all manufacturers, including Blue Island-based Modern Drop Forge in the south suburbs. It's still owned by the Heim family who founded it.
My family's been in business in Blue Island for 97 years. To make a move like this, besides being a business move, it's also a very emotional move.
Heim brothers, raise your right hand. Say Indiana. Indiana. Okay. All right. We have a very simple naturalization ceremony here. So.
Indiana increased recruiting of Illinois jobs in 2011, the year Illinois raised its income tax by 67% and made its corporate income tax the highest in the nation. Indiana touts its new right-to-work law that weakens the power of labor unions, and it boasts the lowest cost in the country for workers' compensation, a program for employees who get hurt on the job. Illinois' cost is 4th highest in America. For a $50,000 a year worker, Illinois employers pay about $1,415 for workers' comp. Employers in Indiana, $580. Here's what that may mean for Modern Drop Forge when it moves next year to this new factory in Merrillville, Indiana.
What I understand is when they move to Indiana, they're going to save between $300,000 and $400,000 a year just on their premium for workers' comp. And
that's huge.
Oh, that's a yearly kick right in the.
That goes right to the bottom line.
Bottom line.
Business groups who worked with Modern Drop Forge claimed one non-financial factor played a big role in the company's eventual decision to depart Illinois.
They were reaching out to State Senator Emil Jones, who was president of the Illinois Senate at the time.
And their state senator.
And they felt that they were totally turned out. No responsiveness whatsoever, no contact, no return phone calls. And I think that might have been the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Next thing you know, Modern Drop Forge is announcing that they're going to invest $35 million in Indiana, and they're going to move their jobs to Indiana.
Contacted by Fox 32 News, former Senate President Emil Jones said he did not recall ever hearing from the owners of Modern Drop Forge. Governor Quinn said Illinois made a generous offer in an effort to keep the company. Repeated phone calls to the company drew no response. A spokeswoman for Governor Quinn's administration said, quote, "This idea of businesses fleeing the state is a myth." She cited a study claiming that in 2012 alone, companies coming to Illinois brought slightly more jobs than were taken by companies leaving. But there is no disputing the state's long-term decline. A University of Illinois study found that 13 years ago, Illinois had 640,000 more jobs than now. Between 1995 and 2009, Illinois lost a net 366,616 tax-paying households and a staggering $26 billion in taxable revenue. If, instead of shrinking, Illinois had grown at merely the national average, a gusher of tax dollars would be flowing into the state treasury. Illinois could have paid its unpaid bills, met its public employee pension obligations, and avoided having its credit rating slashed to the worst of any state, all without job-killing tax increases. The state's politicians have appeared powerless to stop the decline, as noted by the author of a recent University of Illinois study.
I'm afraid that Illinois is getting a reputation as being a state that cannot function. The perception that individuals are out only for their own gain and only for their own political survival.
I asked the mayor for his diagnosis.
What's gone wrong? We do have the fastest growing central business district in America. That would not be called wrong, because that's our muscle. We also have muscle that has atrophied. When we did our study with Brookings Institute and McKinsey, they did show a decline in manufacturing, but they showed us actually holding our own in advanced manufacturing. There's help wanted signs all across manufacturing throughout Illinois.
He added that training workers to fill those advanced manufacturing jobs would help keep their employers here.
Because if all you get is a high school graduation, you're as good as unemployed, unfortunately. That's where the economy's going. And we have to give everybody, starting in kindergarten, starting in elementary school, starting in high school, starting in our community colleges, a total scrub and upgrade of the quality of the education.
Governor Quinn insisted things are improving as he recently snipped a ribbon in Elgin. It's where a Canadian company has promised to hire 50 workers. The Toronto-based CEO said one key attraction was nearby O'Hare Airport with its connections to every corner of the world. Mayor Emanuel told me that after long decades of decline, things are getting better.
We are a healthcare leader, pharmaceutical leader, risk management leader, leader in the insurance industry. We're a leader in the convention and hospitality industry. We have a quality of life unmatched. That's why more companies, 25,000 jobs, have either decided to move headquarters or expand their presence here by adding additional jobs, because we can outcompete, outwork anybody, and outdistribute any product.
It will take all of that for Chicago and Illinois to win back what has been lost.
Ahead, the road to recovery is literally a road, plus the good-paying jobs available right here, right now, lots of them. This is Chicago at the Tipping Point, a Fox 32 News special report about jobs and the economy. Chicago traffic is not just annoying, it's a tangible economic threat. A goal for job creation is to efficiently move goods and people. This is part of why City Hall has worked to expand bicycle riding and why it did not flinch at raising downtown parking garage taxes. Mass transit is a big part of the solution. The CTA has been upgrading trains, tracks, and buses, but it and Metra need more upgrades than they have the money to pay for. Signal, switch, and equipment failures reduce reliability. It's taking commuters too long to get to their jobs. A study found even among those who live close to transit stations, only 25% are able to get to work within 90 minutes. Upgrading infrastructure is a huge project. It takes state and federal money. Well, our state is all but broke, and the federal money basically dried up once the stimulus cash stopped flowing. There are some good-paying jobs with great benefits available in surplus right now in Chicago. Companies with more openings than they can fill. Sounds good if you're looking for employment, but it also points out a problem. A workforce that does not have the skills these job creators in the new economy need. Lisa Chavarria reports on efforts to make sure more people are prepared to work in places like this.
Manufacturing is not dead, it's just changing. The city colleges of Chicago are working to make sure their students have the new skills required. This is the manufacturing program at Daly College.
In the last 2 weeks, we've talked to 6 companies about their hiring needs.
Students here combine hands-on skills with math related to the jobs they're working on. This is a part of the school's College to Careers program.
Typically, in 1 year, students completing 2 semesters should be job ready.
The workplace need is a welcomed feeling for students.
They have an interview this afternoon, but so the prospects are opening up.
Rashida Shannon already has an associate's degree in business administration, but she decided she wants to become a welder.
I felt like manufacturing would give me a broader view as to me finding, a job. I can work on the floor, or I can also take my experience and work maybe perhaps in marketing or sales.
1, 2, 3. All right.
Another city college, Olive Harvey, broke ground on its new transportation, distribution, and logistics center. The school projects roughly 100,000 jobs could come to the region over the next decade. Technology and big data companies are starting to call the Windy City home. Purdue University is starting their new tech-oriented MBA program on Chicago's Near West Side, hoping to attract future high-tech CEOs.
You just have to push back.
Push back?
Yeah.
Innova International uses analytics, or patterns in data, to learn more about its customers' financial situations to determine their credit worthiness. Analytics has grown in the past 5 years.
So analytics used to kind of be confined to the financial sector, but you're really seeing analytics in a variety of sectors now, including healthcare, education, nonprofits, and manufacturing.
90% of all the information that we have today was collected in the last 2 years. So there's truly been an explosion of data.
Linda Birch is an executive recruiter who specializes in the quantitative business sciences.
McKinsey Consulting came out with a study in 2011 that predicts a shortage of between 140,000 and 190,000 deep analytics professionals by the year 2018.
Next, the Walmart fight, 7 years later. Is this store good or bad for Chicago?
My name is Jesse Caver, and my skill is in customer service sales, and I've been looking for work for about 3 months.
Hi, I'm Tim Hartigan. I'm a global sourcing executive, and I've been looking for a position for the last 3 months.
When courting new businesses, Chicago boasts of a culturally diverse workforce. One study, though, found a deep racial divide in who's getting the new jobs. That study found an unemployment rate among African Americans of 24%, 4 times the rate of Chicagoans who are white.
In such a segregated city, that big disparity between black and white unemployment concentrates a whole host of problems in certain communities. Poverty and crime, the violence we've been seeing. An attempt to do something to help those neighborhoods led to a big political battle a few years ago, and former Mayor Richard Daley did something he had never done before: So how has that worked out? Music chart toppers like Lil' Kim used to make a point to stop on Chicago's West Side years ago, mingling with their fans at George's Music Room, one of several businesses where people in North Lawndale could shop and work.
We had the Red Rooster, big supermarket on the corner. Right where the Legion Hall is, that was a men's haberdashery. There was a furniture reupholstery store.
There were even parking meters on this stretch of Roosevelt Road, where today the street is wide open, most storefronts are closed tight, not a job prospect in sight.
I'm mad at why this community had to turn into what it turned into.
The real money is leaving the community.
Where is it going?
Well, it's going outside the community. It's going into the suburbs because we didn't have the stores that were conducive to the working class people going to shop.
Miles away in the far south side Roseland neighborhood, Alderman Anthony Beal still has a commercial strip, but it's been a challenge.
Milk that expires in 2 days, they would sell it to you. Meat that is about to expire or had expired, and they're changing the expiration date on the meat.
Beal says the stores needed competition, better options for his residents. They got both in a big box.
So start from the top and work all the way down.
At the newest of 9 Walmarts to open in Chicago since 2006, store manager Daryl Bowles sees nothing but opportunity.
My favorite part was seeing my associates and how proud they were about opening up the store, and then seeing the excitement of the customers and how they love Walmart being in the community.
Walmart didn't always feel the love here. Unions and other critics fought to keep the retailer and its hundreds of non-union jobs out of Chicago. In 2006, the city council even passed an ordinance to make big box stores like Walmart pay much higher minimum wages than their competitors. It's the only thing Mayor Richard M. Daley ever had to veto, saying it couldn't be just about Walmart.
There's only certain locations you can build these large retail, and we need it. Whether JCPenney's, whether Target, Home Depot, you could go on and name them.
The veto gave aldermen political cover, and there was the rising tide of jobless Chicagoans, with Walmart willing to build in communities where the working poor had become just poor.
This created a lot of jobs for people in the community, and that's what's most important.
Good morning and welcome to Walmart.
Since the first store opened in the Austin neighborhood, Beal has been waiting years for people in his far south side ward to get theirs.
I made a plea to my colleagues in the city council. Some of my colleagues have 4 and 5 grocery stores in their area. I didn't have any. My community has the highest crime rate. We have the highest cancer rate, the highest diabetes rate, the highest unemployment rate, the highest foreclosure rate. But we're not entitled to a good paying job and good produce and things like that in my community.
Good paying job? Some would argue that. Retail, especially discount or low-end retail, is considered a low-wage industry, along with hospitality. And that's part of Chicago's problem with the current economic recovery, the quantity of jobs versus the quality. Cities that are really getting healthier are gaining more mid-wage jobs.
Houston, Texas. A city built on innovative thinking.
Houston leads the pack with double-digit gains in the energy sector last year, the kind of jobs that build the all-important middle class. Compare that to Chicago, where most of the growth is in low-wage industries, and the number of mid-wage jobs has declined 7.6% since 2006. But people like Anthony Harris are not studying those numbers.
You got to do the work to get a bigger pay, because everybody always want to jump in and be the biggest fish in the water, but you do not start like that. You got to learn before you walk.
The father of 2 is counting on his work ethic to fatten his paycheck.
Well, I was at the Walmart on 103rd in Harlem. That was my first starting get-go. And from there, I got transferred over to here to come up to be a supervisor.
Oh, so you're moving up?
Yes, ma'am.
We fought for Walmart to pay a higher wage than they're paying anywhere else in the country. And so we put a community benefits agreement in place.
That agreement includes hiring more than half of the 400 employees from the neighborhood.
It's a major upgrade, and I'm happy, I'm proud.
Upgrade in pay too?
Yeah, as well. Pay, hours, and it's closer to home.
It's also opened the door for the first manufacturing company coming into the area, a company called Method. They're based out of Europe. They're having their distribution center right here in the 9th Ward, and we broke ground on them last month. And that's creating about 120 good paying jobs starting at $65,000 and up.
The hope is neighborhoods that have been passed over for years as too scary or too poor to support business may now be looked at as emerging markets ripe for development.
Next, the city you don't want to be compared to, but all too often we are. Is Chicago the next Detroit?
Hi, I'm Margaret Norman. I'm a certified project management professional, and I've been looking for work for 3 months.
Hi, my name is Christy Brown. I have been looking for a job for about 6 months now. I am currently in the legal field as well as the healthcare field.
When the city of Detroit filed for bankruptcy last summer, the national news coverage asked two questions. What went wrong there, and what other big Midwestern city could be next? Will it be Chicago? Craig Wall went to Detroit to take a look.
One of the reasons why many people wondered if Chicago was going to be the next Detroit is both cities have massive unfunded government pensions. But unlike the Motor City, Chicago has many things working in its favor. First and foremost, it has a very diverse economy. Detroit was once a city that prided itself as the automotive capital of the world, where good union jobs provided tens of thousands of people with relatively low skills a solid middle-class lifestyle. Not anymore. Now, with Detroit's economy in shambles and the city in bankruptcy, many neighborhoods are in ruin. Streets are littered with abandoned homes, burned out, boarded up, and left to decay, where packs of dogs can be seen roaming the rubble in search of food, and young mothers have to push their babies in strollers past homes that have become havens for crime. How did Detroit get to the state we're seeing here?
Well, Detroit used to be a place where people made things. They made big things. They made furnaces and stoves, and they made cars, and during the war they made tanks and artillery shells.
Betty Buss just retired from the Citizens Research Council of Michigan, a nonpartisan public policy research organization. She marvels at how far Detroit has fallen in the last 50 years.
Oh my God, I think it's a tragedy. This is the American tragedy of our time.
The Detroit decline turned disastrous in the last decade, according to experts, culminating with the auto industry crisis of 2008 to 2010, which resulted in massive layoffs. As more people found themselves out of work and upside down on their mortgages, homes were lost to foreclosure and people just moved out. So we look around, we see abandoned buildings like this. Yeah. How many are there around the city of Detroit?
There's about 80,000
buildings
vacant
like this?
Housing units in the city.
Detroit's population, which peaked at more than 1.8 million in 1950, now stands at just over 700,000. The declining tax base hurt city services, forcing politicians to raise taxes, which contributed to even more people leaving the city for the suburbs. That meant more abandoned houses.
It was a perfect storm to some extent for the economy here in Detroit.
Chicago has its own problem with abandoned homes. Estimates put the number here at 80,000, just like Detroit. But Chicago's population is 4 times larger, meaning our city would have to have 320,000 vacant homes to be in the same shape as Detroit. So while the bad is not nearly as bad here, the good is much better.
And Chicago has a very diversified economy. Besides being bigger, it's also very diversified. I think the mayor said the biggest sector of employment in Chicago is about 17%.
Unlike Detroit, which was almost entirely dependent on the auto industry, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, Chicago's biggest private sector employers cover the spectrum, including banking, telecommunications, insurance, and healthcare, just to name a few. It's a balance that provides a crucial economic buffer.
It immunizes us in case something happens in one of those industries, it won't take the town down.
But another element that I think is very different is that Chicago retained and does retain a very strong central city, a strong downtown.
Boyle calls Detroit job poor in the central city and job rich in the suburbs.
We have hemorrhaged, and I mean that quite literally, a lot of these central city functions to the suburbs.
So while the two cities seem on different economic paths, they share a problem that could haunt them both down the road: massive looming pension obligations that will have to be met. This year alone, Chicago has to make $400 million in pension payments because for the last 2 decades, those payments were, by statute, largely deferred.
Our payments just about triple next year in the city of Chicago. So we have to do something, because what will happen is all this money will go to pension payments, and it'll crowd out services for police, fire, schools, all the other things the city's supposed to do. All that money will be devoted to paying pensions.
So Chicago is at a crossroads. Without some changes regarding current and future pension obligations, the outlook may not continue to be so positive. Experts say a look at Detroit's state of bankruptcy should serve as a wake-up call.
That's one of the things, one of the lessons that's coming out of what's happening here in Detroit. If you have bills, pay them. If you can't pay them, figure out a way in the future not to accumulate those bills.
While Chicago may not be the next Detroit, experts say the key for the city is to deal with the massive pension problems now and to keep attracting new businesses and with them jobs to keep the economy moving.
So, Mike, I know you asked Mayor Emanuel if he thought Chicago was going to be the next Detroit, and I'm sure I can imagine what his answer was.
Quote, no way. But Robin, he does concede that those huge unfunded liabilities for public employee pensions are a flashing red warning light.
Certainly at the top of the fix-it list. We've talked a lot about the world changing, but there's one trend that could actually work in Chicago's favor. A major global urbanization is underway. By the year 2030, 60% of the world's population are projected to be living in cities. The migration is expected to turbocharge world economic growth. We have a chance to be one of the engines. In the next 12 years, the Chicago region is projected to be the only region in America that grows into a mega city, joining New York and LA. A mega city is a metropolitan area with more than 10 million people.
That kind of density packs immense opportunity, but also, Robin, big challenges. We've got to find the money to fix the infrastructure that we need to repair. We've also got to find environmentally sensitive ways to protect our resources and deal with waste products, not to mention all those other big city problems of violent crime, failing schools, and of course unemployment.
And experts say if the whole region's going to win, then cities and states have to find the political will to cooperate with one another. We couldn't get all this into 1/2 hour, so we've put some links on myfoxchicago.com to the economic research we used in this special. Also there you will find some strategies for your job search. We hope you find it helpful.
In the coming months, Fox 32 News will dig deep into other major problems that face Chicago and the region.
Because that's what we do. We are committed to finding the issues and the solutions to the things that put Chicago at the tipping point.
When I grow up, I want to be a policeman.
When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. And I want to be a pilot when I grow up.
What I want to be when I grow up is a vet. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor.
When I grow up, I want to be a professional dancer.
When I grow up, I want to be a scientist.
When I grow up, I want to be a ballerina.
When I grow up, I want to be a police officer.
And I want to be a teacher.
When I grow up, I want to be a mechanical engineer.
When I grow up, I want to be a vet.
When I grow up, I want to be Iron Man, and my name is Clifford. And I'm going to grow to be a doctor.
What I want to be when I grow up is an ambulance girl.
When I grow up, I want to be a swimming coach.
And I want to be a president of America.